Welcome, everyone. My name is Cheryl Dahl. I'm the Climate Initiative Manager at Solutions Journalism Network, and I'm just delighted that everyone is here. Thank you so much for coming. In case you have not heard of SJN before and you're new to us, we're a nonprofit that works on teaching journalists how to do solutions journalism. To us, this is telling the other half of the story. You can't just talk about problems if you're not going to also talk about solutions. And it's creating accountability for those in power, because plenty of companies and governments benefit from problems persisting. And then it's producing necessary insights for society to thrive, news that people can truly use. So today we have an amazing panel lined up, and it will be moderated by the very capable Aman Ahzar.
Hi, everyone. A warm welcome to all of you. We have Paul West. He's senior scientist at Project Drawdown. We have Katherine Hamilton. She is conservation, finance, and policy advisor. Welcome to you too. And Yessenia Funes, climate director at Atmos. What are nature-based carbon removal technologies, and why do we need them to begin with?
When I think of nature-based reductions, this is sequestration in land and water. So for example, in tropical forests, in grasslands, in mangroves, the earth, as Paul mentioned, is inherently part of the carbon cycle. And so that in fact, 20% of our emissions are coming from deforestation. And so the biggest emitters in the world right now are the US, number one, China, number two, Indonesia and Brazil. And Indonesia and Brazil are 3 and 4 because of their rate of deforestation. They're about 70 to 80%. Respectively, the source of their emissions is deforestation.
I think one of the most fascinating studies that I've covered is a reminder of also the carbon potential of the animals on Earth, right? Whales is a big one. I covered a study published in 2021 that reminded us of, there used to be many more whales on this planet than currently exist. And the study found that whales eat a lot more than we initially thought they did. And so what that means is that our oceans are capable of levels of productivity that are really hard for us to fathom now, given just how we've depleted this sort of keystone species in our oceans.
Who are the main proponents of nature-based removal? I mean, if you could lay out some of the actors or main actors in this field.
Certainly the obvious ones are conservation organizations, but more and more there are a number of companies and governments that are behind the idea. Unfortunately, I think oftentimes it's more of a marketing and a feel-good endeavor, but just in general, there is a growing interest, and it is an important opportunity and solution. But I think over times it's oversold and underthought.
Because of the urgency of climate change, there's a huge number of people also working on carbon dioxide removal, greenhouse gas removal from a tech perspective. And I think that we have to understand that they're a piece of the puzzle, right? And so climate change is urgent, it's complicated, and we're going to need many pieces. We're going to need to manage our nature, we're going to need to manage our ecosystem, we're going to need to manage our use of fossil fuels, of other greenhouse gases. And so I think when we think about this, we have to be systems thinkers, and we have to understand how many elements to the problem there are, and that we need to be addressing them simultaneously with our sense of urgency.
Katherine used this phrase about, the sort of system, right, that we live under. And I think it's important to zoom out and look at nature-based solutions within the wider system in which, the climate crisis has occurred, right? The systems of capitalism, of colonialism, and how all these different histories has allowed for not only the degradation of nature, but also these market-based solutions, which, nature-based solutions are market-based solutions, right? And the sort of pitfalls that come in when you put a dollar amount on what many communities, especially indigenous communities, consider valuable in and of itself.
Maybe situate the nature-based carbon removals in the climate policy space. Where do they figure?
So while we're seeing major investment in nature-based solutions, I think philanthropy put forth some $5 billion in 2021 toward this. We're not seeing that same level of investment going toward actual emissions reductions, which ultimately comes down to transitioning off of fossil fuels.
I think sort of the order of operations is to protect what is left. Second step is allow our forests to regrow as much as we can. Take a hands-off approach that is the best in terms of biodiversity and carbon. And sort of like a third tier is planting of forests, but those aren't anywhere near as diverse and don't store anywhere near as much carbon.
As a journalist, do you see like an entry point, a space for more collaboration with journalists from, for lack of a better word, global South, developing countries who are host to some of these projects?
I've heard from indigenous communities here in the US, right, who are worried about what these technologies, or rather these plans, mean for their own lands. In 1992, indigenous peoples from across the globe came together calling for the protection of nature, not because, climate change was here to threaten them, but because they were witnessing the devastation of it. And it's taken decades now for world leaders to catch up and agree. However, they're doing so without the involvement, consent, consultation, but really without the partnership of indigenous communities.
So there's some really interesting examples. There's a standard called the Climate Community Biodiversity Standard that looks specifically at these issues for projects, which is worth checking out. There's this term benefit sharing, which is basically how we talk about this in the carbon offset world. How do we make sure everyone gets the benefits appropriately? There's groups like the Nature Conservancy who've done a lot of work on forest trends as an organization that's looking at carbon offsets that explicitly benefit indigenous communities with high integrity, both from an environmental and a social perspective.
In my mind, what I would like to see is more work on conservation of nature for its own sake. But in terms of land tenure for indigenous people, I mean, that is just the right thing to do. And yes, it has a climate outcome, which in general is very positive, but it shouldn't be our main motivator for that as an action.
Right. Thanks to all of you who joined in, and I really hope that this session piqued your interest in digging further. And so goodbye and be well. And Cheryl, back to you.
So thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for your wisdom and insights. It was really, really helpful. Thank you.